coming tonight. We're going to unveil our master plan. It's been in works for some time. So with no further delays, Paul Logue, our city planner, will explain some of the steps to how we got to this process.
Sure. All right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. I know it's a pretty nice day out there. At least it looks like it to me, so we won't try to keep you in here all night. I think we said till 8 o'clock, but probably some attention spans will start waning by then. I can be really boring too, so I'll apologize for that up front. And I'll try to keep my comments relatively brief, and then Andrew will talk a little bit more detail about some of the recommendations for the plan. If you haven't already, or if before you leave, we do have a sign-in sheet over at that table. We also have copies of the executive summary from the plan. You're welcome to pick one of those up if you haven't already. We did not bring copies of the entire master plan. It's at least 70 pages, I believe, and probably well over 150 once we add in all the appendixes. It is available on the city's website. There's a document folder set up on the city's site under Arts, Parks, and Recreation. It says master plan. We have all of the information in there, all the summary documents as well as the plan. So if you haven't looked through that already, I would certainly encourage you to do so. And again, I would like to just acknowledge a few people that are in the room here who come out this evening. Mayor Paul Weil, of course, is here. Our Service Safety Director, Paula Horan Mosley. I see several members of City Council here. Jennifer Cochran, Christine Nisley, Jeff Reisner, Steve Patterson, Jim Sands, President of Council. Did I miss anybody? Is Kent here? Chris? No? Okay. And Rick Abel, the chair of the city's Arts, Parks, and Recreation Advisory Committee. Rick is also the former mayor of the city. And we have a few other members of the advisory committee here, I believe, as well. James Petrick is here. Paige, I saw Paige in here. Paige Aloft from the... Yeah. And Bob Winters, of course, right back there. Bob's the chair of the city's Municipal Arts Commission. Hi, Bob. Good to see you. All right, so without further ado, what I wanted to do is just give a brief overview of the planning process. I'll just go through a few things here before Andrew takes it over. We started this plan back in 2012, actually. What we wanted to do was get an update of a strategic plan that was done in 2007 by the Arts, Parks, and Recreation staff at that time. They did a strategic plan, which means it's just an internal document. They had meetings among staff and a few of the elected officials and administrators of the city, and kind of said where do we want to go, what do we want to do over the next 5 or so years. At that time, because it was a strategic plan, they didn't say, let's talk to the public, let's go out and have some meetings, let's do surveys and get feedback and try to adjust what we do based on that. The strategic plan was extremely successful. I think when Rich and I and Andrew started looking through that plan back in 2012, we noticed that almost everything that they identified as being goals that they wanted to implement, they actually did. So it's clear that we needed to start talking about a new strategic plan. As Rich and I were talking about the possibility of doing a strategic plan, I started pushing towards let's go for a bigger picture of the master planning process and really try to get that public input involved so that when we start focusing on what we want to do over the next 10 years or so, that we know that we have a pretty good foundation, that what we do as a city is what the public would like to see us do. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody always gets what they want. Planning is a consensus-driven process, but what it means is that it's pretty much everything more or less that we could all live with, and most of us should be pleased with the results. So, what we did in 2012, in early January, we worked with Dr. Anita James, who is on the faculty at Ohio University. I don't think she's in here this evening, but Anita had a graduate PhD level course that she was teaching that quarter, that was before the semester switch, on communications, and they wanted to do applied communication studies. So we approached them about them organizing a public process to help inform this plan. They had a public meeting where we had about 50 or 60 people show up. We did stakeholder interviews. They interviewed 20 elected officials, Arts, Parks, and Recreation Advisory Committee members, a few members of the public, and some city staff members. They sat down with 20 of them. Each person got a 1-hour interview with a few members of this class. When they were all done, they had, I think, about 107 or 110 pages, I was told, of single-space text from all of this that they tried to transcribe and get some, and try to figure out what people wanted. We also did a mail survey from it, and then they did a final presentation for the class. The mail survey, we did a random sample of, I think we sent it out to about almost 1,000 city addresses. We used Arts Parks, or we used community center membership lists, as well as the city's utility billing list, so that we could get a random sample. We had about 125 come back. I think we had a 15% return rate, which was okay, but we were hoping for about 25%. So because we didn't get that 25%, we also went out and tried to do just an online survey that was available to anybody in the public to give us feedback on. That, I think we had well over 100 respondents on it, and some really good feedback and comments to help us move forward. Well, looks like I just summarized all of that right there. Okay. Once we had all that part done, we also used a lot of the data that Rich and his staff compile on who's taking classes here, how many people are using our facilities, how much land we have, how many basketball courts we have, how many swimming pool lanes we have, how many volleyball courts, how many basketball, baseball diamonds, all of that information. And we try to gauge that based on some national standards. And there's the American Parks and Recreation Association. We have some data that says that for every 2,000 city residents, there should be, or 5,000 city residents, you should have one basketball court, or half a tennis court. For every 25,000 people, you should have one city pool. You should have a 9-hole or an 18-hole golf course if you have 50,000 residents. So we used all of that information, which is in the plan, and said, okay, how are we doing? Do we have too much of something? Do we have not enough? And how can we use all of that information? We had some very interesting findings from all of that data. The big one, I think, from the survey information that we got and from all the stakeholder information, is that for the most part, the city of Athens, the public is pretty satisfied with what we have. When we looked at the numbers for what we have versus what we should have based on national standards, for most things, we far exceed what's expected. So we have a very robust amount of facilities as far as basketball courts, green space. We were out of the park. One of the interesting things that we learned from this is that even though we have an extremely high acreage of green space that we have access to, people in the surveys and stakeholder interviews said we want more of that, actually. I think that says something really interesting about our community as well. One really interesting part we had that we struggled with is that Athens is unique in that it has that arts part. Most communities have parks and recreation. If they think about art, they don't think about it on the level that we do. We have arts, parks, and recreation. We have Arts West, which is a fantastic facility. All the survey information, a big thing that came back was said that we need to do some updates to Arts West. We actually jumped the gun on that last summer and started really working on those updates to Arts West. If anybody's been in there since we reopened it last July? Last September. We have a fantastic community space for Arts West right now. Again, very rare in a community of our size to even have facilities like that. So what we learned is that people acknowledge that we're really fortunate, but also that we have really good facilities already. We also learned that art component is really important, not just Arts West, but also that people want to see a lot more public art in Athens. We are an arts community. We have a municipal arts commission, also very rare for a community of this size. We have a lot of artists in town. So there's an expectation that we should be bringing that art into our public realm, besides just in that performance atmosphere. So we're trying to build that into our plan. We also learned that accessibility for all Athenians is really important. We've been trying to work on that as well so that we have better access for our disabled community, whether it be wheelchair access and things of that nature. We acknowledge that that's something that we need to work on. We have a fantastic park on Dairy Lane right now that is accessible to all. We'd like to see more of that happening with the remainder of our parks as we move forward with implementing this plan. And that is all I have to talk about. Hope I didn't bore you too much. I've got Andrew's going to come up and give the presentation to get into more detail with what the plan recommends, talk a little bit about the goals from it, and then once we get wrapped up with that part, we're going to do some quick Q&A if anybody has anything they'd like to ask. So, you ready here?
Yeah. So what we're going to do is you're going to see highlights. We're actually going to go through the executive summary, which kind of condenses down what's going on in the comprehensive plan, so I don't bore you with page after page of just material. I think that one of the important things to remember when we're talking about arts, parks, and recreation is that it's part of an overall city mission. And part of that is we want people that come in and live in the city to first have a safe place to live. So we consider safety. Is it someplace that I could let my kids walk outside by themselves? That kind of thing. Second part is education. Is it a place where we're going to give a good quality education to people that live here? The third part is what is there to do? And that's where we come into play. So when we think about what is there to do, it includes arts, it includes passive recreation, it includes libraries even, and that kind of thing, and then community center, sports, and all those different great things that we have. So the master plan goals there's 6 of them, the first 3 here. I'm not going to go through line by line. I know you guys can read too. But we'll highlight some of these. The first one, high quality, well maintained, reflect history and culture. We want to be really careful to remember the past while looking toward the future. And part of that is embracing the culture of Athens and where it's been and where it's going. Maintain and expand open space lanes and provide passive recreation spaces on all the state park grounds. There's not a lot of room in Athens to expand on around here. If you've noticed, we're kind of maxed out on the space category, so we have to be really creative when it comes to this. We figure out different ways that we can maximize all those different spaces and do what we need to do to provide good opportunities for people. Providing and promoting active lifestyles. And then 4 through 6, provide program and facilities that meet the needs and interests of the entire population, not just one segment or one interest group. That we want to consider everybody that lives here and make sure that we have something for as many people as possible. It's kind of casting that wide net and a wide vision. And that's part of why, when we built Community Center, we were thinking in that direction. At that time, we thought about with Arts West expanding into the arts culture, and that's what we want to focus on as we move forward as well, is to keep that net wide and try to give people as many opportunities as possible. Using existing resources efficiently and sustainably is another important thing, and efficient administration of the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Department, and I know that's probably boring for most of you. So keeping those 6 goals in mind, we're going to move toward facility-specific recommendations, and we used those 6 goals to kind of intelligently form and shape what kind of recommendations we want to move toward. So we'll start with the community center because it's the biggest, and then we'll kind of work our way to different parts. And what's going to happen is I'm going to bring up a certain area, and Rich is going to expand upon the thought. That's kind of the goal. He's like, all right. So the community center is 14 years old. We opened in 2000, and there are some things that we need to do to continue to keep the facility top notch. The maintenance facility, which is right behind you guys over across the parking lot, is part of the hangars. They're pretty old. We use that. It's twofold. One side is parks and recreation. We keep our mowers, our maintenance vehicles, our salt truck, all that kind of stuff over there. And then the other side is the lands and buildings shop. So for the maintenance of all the facilities in the city, kind of come out of that area over there. We've got a couple guys that work on that side too. A recommendation would be to move it to West State Street and then have that building torn down and replaced with landscaping. It is really close to the side of the road there. When they expanded East State Street is a little bit narrower. They expanded that out. We've got like a 5-foot space between the roadway and the building. So the second part, meeting rooms inside the community center can be decorated with local art installations, as have been done at Arts West. We did a really interesting thing at Arts West, if you haven't been there. Along the walls in the performance space, we put up the material, and Chelsea, who is the program specialist at Arts West, is right back there, could probably talk a lot more about this than I can, but we put up these sound barriers as a way to work on the sound in the room, but they also double as a way that we can install art pieces in a really nice, clean way. And it was economically, it was a great deal to put together, and it looks really great. And we do a monthly installation. Every month we change it out. We want to do something similar here to expand that art field. And then the chess and checkerboard tables outside. Is there anything you want to add to this area right here, Rich?
No, it just, I think Andrew's mentioned that we've got to the point where we need to address painting, high dusting. We go through tables and chairs, and those all are expenses and part of what we need to cover with our revenue generating programs. And it's just to the point where we need to address them, because then the building deteriorates quicker and things need to be, this is our showcase for us and for the city. We get a lot of people in here, they notice, and the first thing they say is, wow. We want to keep the wow factor. It's very important.
Yeah. As far as usage for the community center, we're pretty jam-packed every single day with programs and activities. We get a lot of high usage. That's a really great thing, but it also wears on the building. This room is used, I mean, right before this we had a bunch of kids in here. This room got transformed in an hour from having kids with their juice and crackers and everything to where you're sitting at now. And that takes a lot of effort to get it turned over in a really positive way. So we'll move on to, this is not in a super specific order, just kind of rotated as far as how I put it together, I guess. So Sells Park, Hawkwoods, and Hope Drive Preserve. If you don't know, Sells Park is kind of right behind you in the east side neighborhood here, and Hawkwoods is just off of that. I'll let Rich talk a little about this.
We've done several surveys in the past, and the trails in Sells Park and Hawkwoods falls usually into the top 1 to 3, depending on what time of year it is. So it's a very highly used area. We finally have gotten water up there. And I'm happy to announce we have a NatureWorks grant. We got the final paperwork today, all signed, I's dotted, T's crossed, and basically we'll make an accessible path from the parking lot to the pond. Along with that, we're looking at providing restrooms. We have water, restrooms. We also have to tie in, part of my thinking is, all right, what's the maintenance, what's the cost? When we do that, what's going to happen to those facilities? The neighborhood keeps an eye on that, but it is out of the way. And unfortunately, a lot of our restrooms we open up in spring. We have 6 or 7. They are shelters for some of our homeless people. Not only that, we have about 70 or 80 trash cans that we empty. So again, when we look at expanding or improving these sites, I'm going to bring in what's the maintenance cost and what do we have enough staff. Pretty much everybody will tell you they never have enough staff, but when you take a look at what we do and how we try to accomplish it, my hat's off to the folks that we have working for us, because 150 acres, we make it up to the trails when we get the local neighbors to say, hey, there's a tree down. There's no great way to take a volunteer group up there because, one, we don't have restrooms where I can bring a college group out of the woods, use the restrooms. Digging a cat hole is not a good idea for your volunteers. We finally have water to keep them hydrated, but that's a little gem up there. We'd like to have another gem down to Dollar Woods, tie into Camp Rotan and the Gwandi property, so we have something on the south side. We do have a small space, maybe for a small shelter, and a couple picnic tables. I know the Far East Neighborhood Association has been meeting up there and having picnics, and I believe we could probably do that south side just as easily. And we tie those in. We've had them looked at as far as I forget the guy's name, but he looked at our trails and he gave us a B+. So our trail system is not bad. It's general routine maintenance. And we really have Athens trails, Phil's here, they pull everything that needs to be pulled as far as the invasive species. They do some culverts and whatnot. But all that we work together to try to get those things done. It's definitely an area I'd like to see us improve on, provide some more benches, but really be able to have some folks that assist us and help us maintain those facilities.
Moving on. Our next park is Highland Park. It's a little community park off of Highland Avenue, hence the name. It is an older, aging park when it comes to the infrastructure of the playground, some of the other things that are happening up there. It does get a lot of utilization. I was up there over the weekend, and we have a lot of different people that are using that, and that's a really good thing. What we'd like to do is install a new accessible playground up there. Like I said, it's aging, what we have currently.
Currently we are probably in the record books. I had the guy who sold us the playground in 1986. He thinks it's the year that he sold it to us. He cannot believe it's in that great a shape. So, you know, we kind of get a feather in our cap for keeping something that long in great shape. But it does not fulfill playground safety now. There's certain things that we need to meet, and it's not meeting that. So, Bob Gryway, which we playgrounds out here and out back, we work with him quite often. The one at Southside. Just got an email from him. He put together a bunch of pictures and quotes. That's really not something we were going to bring down here and show you. This is what we're going to do because we're still identifying some things, but we're still looking for feedback. So Highland Park is definitely one that we've been concentrating on. We have a full-time restroom up there. We have a small path that would lead up. It definitely needs to be made wider, and the slope needs to be addressed. But pretty much everything except for the shelter will probably be removed, and new playground equipment probably installed.
Another thing to highlight is commissioning public art installation. You're going to see that a few times in the different slides. And again, with the arts, parks, and recreation portion of it, we want to let people encounter art wherever they go. And part of our mission with the arts park is to include that. And we wanted to do that in our different parks. So you're going to see that a few different times.
At Highland, we once had a brick sculpture that was taken down. So that was, we're looking at more things like that.
West State Street Park. And this is another one where the playground is pretty darn old. It's on par with Highland. And in fact, the cargo net on the playground, I think, is the same one that I played on when I was little, actually. It's pretty darn old. I was over there the other day. It's got like green stuff growing on it. It's pretty gross.
That's the one back around the loop where the bike path comes through.
One of our goals for any of our areas is to make it multi-purpose and multi-use, so that we can have opportunities for as many people as possible. Just like community center, we use it for lots of different types of things. We want our parks to be similar. Some of the recommendations would be to include a basketball, volleyball, and tennis courts down there on that end of town. To realign and add more parking. If you've been down there on a weekend, parking is rough. It's pretty crazy to see that many vehicles and that many people down in that area. So that's something that we'd like to address. At the same time, it is the wellhead. So we have to do that in a really careful way. We want to be really aware of that part of that as well. So those are things that we're going to have to consider as we move forward with that. Again,
if I may add, any of the playground equipment that we are looking at will be all made for handicap or accessible, wider decks, ramps, and whatnot. We, as a Parks and Recreation Department, are pretty much looking to go that way, and as far as when the pool looks when we build or come to design, moving in the future just like this building, it's a must. You have to. It's pass code and to make everybody be able to enjoy it. So anytime we talk about any of the playgrounds, That's going to be a standard.
And then the last point, this is something we've been talking about in passing for a while, and we're getting to be a little bit more serious about our desire for doing something like this would be to work on a collaboration with OU to relocate their driving range and replace that with soccer fields. If you've been to our current soccer fields, which are over here, they're in the floodway, they're not even in the floodplain. And we have some pretty substantial challenges when it comes to soccer over there. For one, if it rains really hard, especially in the spring, which is when we have our spring youth soccer, we can be washed out for a while. And we've had that happen before. The water was up not that long ago, it's dropped back down. Even if it doesn't cover the fields, it gets really, really soggy over there. The second part is it is very difficult to maintain and grow good turf in a floodway. It's a very big challenge. And right now, it is mostly mud and a little bit of crabgrass, I think.
You forgot some of the geese.
It's well fertilized.
Yes. You never have a problem with fertilizer.
But then again, that is an environmental hazard for our kids where they're playing in an area that it's covered in goose stuff. And it is a challenge down on that end. What we'd like to do is, again, the space issue is critical in the area, so we can't just purchase, several acres of open land somewhere and then throw some soccer fields. We have to think about how can we do this in a good way. And the more we look at West 8th Street Park, it's one way in, one way out. That means there's no through traffic. It's a large area where the driving range is. It's not just the driving range, but there's a large space behind that. And we have the ability to locate water and bathrooms in that area as well. So it is an opportunity that we'd like to pursue.
Well, a bonus would be that with something with OU is that we will probably have possibly ownership or a long-term lease. We do have a lease with the current soccer fields, yet we don't own the land and we can't really do much there. What worries me the most to our department is that we do not lease parking. So we don't own any spot to park at any given time. We really don't own the fields. Any plans that we go forth with, really we have to go to Conservancy, and in the floodway you can't build anything, or very little. And typically we've been there 3 or 4 times and pretty much have gotten shot down with all kinds of different ideas. So our main focus is with the big user groups, we have 5 or 6 different groups, is to try to grow grass. And we've tried just about everything. So really we're looking at, with our population, our soccer group, let's go somewhere else and focus and see if we can thrive, and have more control over and do more to that facility.
Southside Park. We've been doing a lot of work on Southside recently. If you haven't been by there, we put in an accessible playground recently, a water fountain. The covered bridge has been rehabbed. We built bathrooms a few years ago. The parking lot there is fairly new. We moved it off of the street and created a little lot. But there's rubber surface
is a big addition.
and that's something that we've had a lot of success with. That was kind of the test case. We want to expand that. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But we do have some things we'd like to do over there. It's one of our highest usage parks, if not the highest usage daily park. We get a lot of people there. Not just kids playing on the playground, but we also do a shelter house for birthday parties and rentals. And we have a lot of people that eat their lunch there. If you go during the lunch hour, you see a lot of people in the parking lot or sitting at the little pavilion next to the bathroom that eat their lunch. And, we do get a lot of people in and out of there every day. Some of the recommendations, parking lot can be expanded. We do have a little bit of space off the side. And right now, if you've been down there on a really heavy usage day, people are parking the grass anyway. Dairy Lane, we have a miniature golf course back there. We work with Avar and Up People First. They kind of help us with maintaining that area. and it's been a pretty good collaboration so far. I was down there earlier today. I worked with the downtown Kiwanis, and they're rehabbing the shelter house a little bit. They're doing some painting and stuff for us. We work with them. But there are some concerns. For one, we have limited parking over there along the street, and we'd like to see some more enforcement along that drive. We have a lot of people, especially from the Child Development Center, that park all the way down the street. If somebody wanted to use the park during the day, it's nearly impossible to get over there because there's no parking. We have a couple basketball courts down there, and if you've been down there, half of the basketball court's actually covered in grass. It's in pretty bad shape. There's not really much asphalt left of it. The hoops themselves are in really bad shape. We also have a little volleyball court that isn't mentioned here, but it's kind of connected with that in as bad a shape as the basketball court. And we'd like to add a disc golf course in that area. We have a little bridge that goes into a grassy knoll on the other side of the pavilion over there. There's some space to be able to do something like that.
Well, a couple areas like that. We're finally getting a couple ball teams to focus on the ball field, keeping them up in a nice condition, because typically a ball field grows grass when you're not on it. The basketball court's a prime example. Nicer facility, maybe some more people to maintain it. It's one of those things, I don't get a call about the nets down at Dairy Lane basketball court, because we have so many other facilities that people use. So either we repurpose them, or we'd really like to bring them up to snuff. Like again, Andrew mentioned the parking. Maybe it's another situation where we collaborate with OU and use Pingree Lane and the High Ropes course for some additional parking. It's been identified as an outdoor amphitheater. We could do something down below on the whole hillside. It's kind of tucked back in. It wouldn't be a whole lot of noise problems and issues, but again, we run into the parking. Currently, we just have it's a large hill, and we have a large problem with drainage. So we really have to be careful. We work with Havar, we put people first. I think 4 of those holes were actually completely buried under 6 inches of mud and grass. We pretty much built holes above that and made that course playable and usable. And every time it rains, it's, we battle the water, but where don't we battle water in Athens?
With Dairy Lane, it is one of our highest used shelter houses, so we rent it out for a lot of parties, graduations and stuff. You can't get it right now for most of the spring because it's pretty well booked up for graduations at this point. So we do get a lot because it's one of our largest ones.
It is our largest one.
So we get a lot of people that do that, and we rent out, well, we don't rent it out, but we give out equipment with a deposit to use the miniature golf course and some different things. Arts West. Arts West has been one of the areas for me personally that I've really grown to admire and kind of take as something I really like to work with, and I work with Chelsea quite a bit on some of the things that we've done there already. Last year we got a little bit of money to rehab the upstairs performance space. We took out the carpet, we redid the flooring, we redid the panels, or we installed panels and artwork, and we put in new speakers just the other day. We've done a lot of stuff to the performance space already, and not for much money. We've been really good about stretching our dollars for that space to make it a really premier space. And what we're running into now, and I'll get to some of these points here in a second, is that we're getting a lot more utilization, but with that comes certain problems. And some of those problems we need to work on alleviating. Our bathroom situation, especially in the downstairs, is in pretty bad shape. If you've been there, especially in the men's room, the urinal is at like chest height for me. It's kind of, I don't know why they did it that way. It's very strange. It's unique. It's a unique place. It's very Athens. But the upstairs space, we want the upstairs space, the downstairs space, we want the downstairs to reflect what we're doing with the upstairs. We are getting a lot more usage. We have a lot of things that we'd like to do with the space. The basement is an interesting place, like I was just saying. The kitchen has similar issues especially with drainage and that kind of thing. What we'd like to do is do something that similar to what we have here at the community center. We have a catering kitchen here that's very usable. It's a nice open space, and we can lock it. At Arts West, any person that can come in has access to everything in that space. And say, well, what's that matter? Well, when you have a refrigerator or you have any sort of sink or whatever, people tend to use that. That's a good thing, but people also leave things in the refrigerator. People come in and take stuff out. People tend to dump things down the drains. And again, we have a drainage situation there. So when you drain your coffee, do not put coffee grounds into your sinks. Please don't do that. And we have issues with that on a regular basis. We have to get Greg and Brian, our great maintenance guys, to come over and dig that stuff out again. And we'd like to stop calling them so much to do stuff like that. And then we'll get to the stair lift or elevator. Right now, it is very difficult. Even if you have any mobility issues at all, it's very difficult to get into any of our spaces. We have currently a ramp that goes into the performance space in the back. That's a good thing. Well, it's also a bad thing because where you have your performances start in the back. So let's say you are a little bit late and you have mobility issues. You have to go in through the back door there, go in through the side, and now you're staying in the middle of the performance, which isn't necessarily a great thing. It's a little distracting. Our bathroom, which is ADA accessible, is also in that section. So let's say you need to use the restroom. You're going to move your way all the way through the space, through the door, during the performance, over to there. And that, again, is distracting for everybody and embarrassing for the individual. I've been talking with a few different people. There's a couple different opportunities that we might be able to pursue related to doing some sort of lift or elevator. One option would be to take out the ramp and have a street level elevator using hydraulic lift. That would be a step and a half, basically entry level, half step up to the performance space, full step down to the basement, which would be one option. And we have a little bit of space back there to work with. Right now, if you were to go into the basement, if you were in a wheelchair or had any mobility issues, you'd have to go all the way around the building and then knock on the door, which is a fire exit on the back side of the space, and hope that somebody's in that area to let you in. So we do have different issues. It's a very old building. It's got a lot of character. We'd like to highlight the character at the same time, maybe replace some of that character with some usability. Guani Preserve and Dollar Park. Rich can talk about this.
I think it basically touched base upon that when we talked about the South Park area, what some of our plans are, survey some of the neighborhood, really find out and let them know what our plans are. Basically, be bike and pedestrian trails. I've already contacted OU. They are waiting to go in development. So a lot of mapping needs to be done. And then hopefully some volunteer groups, or whoever. If you want to sign up and work on trails, we'll definitely take your help. Probably develop a parking lot, possible some restrooms there, and start off mapping our way. We're lacking maybe possible easement or purchase to get to Camp Rotan. Currently, the Dollar and the Guandi touch, where there's a lot of opportunities for wildlife viewing, bird watching, etc. So we'd really like to get that started here fairly soon, but there's probably one key ingredient that we need to try to see if we can't knock down and join that with the Camp Rotan and the user groups that are currently using that.
So those are our parks and our different areas of highlight. Now on to what I would call the goodies, I guess, the capital improvement priorities. Now these are the things that they're going to cost. But we've identified them as being very important, and in no particular order of importance, but all very, very important. I think that if any of us were to prioritize in some order, we'd come up with a totally different list. But we have 5 things that we're going to talk about in terms of priorities for the next few years. Number 1, maintenance and staffing. 2, maintenance and upkeep for all of our parks and our areas. If we're going to put stuff in, we got to figure out a way to keep them looking nice. One of the unfortunate things working in Parks and Recreation is that people like the shiny new things, and that's really great, but that stuff doesn't stay shiny new forever, and we have to think about the long-term impact that putting something new in is going to have, and that's going to come from doing maintenance on them, having the appropriate maintenance levels to continue to keep the upkeep with it. Accessibility. We're going to talk a little bit more about the outdoor pavilion, amphitheater idea, and then everybody's favorite, maybe not my favorite, but the swimming pool. I spend a lot of time over there, that's why I say that. It was one of those things when I came into the gig, I didn't realize that was going to be part of it. And Rich is like, hey, guess what? You're now in charge of the pool. And it's like, all right, I guess.
More of a mad scientist.
Yeah, I actually really enjoy it. It's an interesting place. It's a big chemistry set. Maintenance staffing, I'll let Rich talk about that a little bit.
Well, we've mentioned a couple areas, Dairy Lane, some of our facilities. You take a look at our sand volleyball. We have 2 full-time employees whose main job is to clean every restroom, empty every trash can, which is about 70 plus in the city, and mow 150 acres. That's quite a bit. And we do get 5 seasonal workers, and they do a great job, but typically about week 5, they're not on their honeymoon any longer, and cleaning out trash cans and toilets and things aren't as much fun. With that being said, if the digger goes down on Richland Avenue to try to get a bolt in it, or replace trash can slats, or to do regular general maintenance, sometimes Andrew and I roll up our sleeves and get outside and we take care of it. We work as a team to try to tackle everything we can do. So that being said, introducing maybe a part-time person who specializes in drywall painting, tiling, toiletry. This can help lands and buildings ease some of their workload. They can mow landscape around here. We all know this past winter wasn't a whole lot of fun. We did a lot of snow removal. I got guys working overnight. The street department has their own bunch of things they have to maintain. But I've got a pretty good guy right now. We were able to pretty much plow all the parking lots, plow the bike path, go to the dog parks, go everywhere we possibly could go to remove snow, because we still like to play in the snow. So we did as much as we could with what we had. And I think we can always improve. But with that improvement, I do believe we have to take a look at our staffing deficiencies and address that, whether it's additional full-time, contracting, or part-time, permanent part-time people who will join our staff.
With the bike path in particular, you have to remember it's not just a recreation thing. People use that as an actual route for work, for school, all those different things. There's a lot of people, and I help with the bike path. It's amazing to see the number of people carrying groceries from Kroger and Walmart back to their houses over on this side of the town. So it is being used not just for recreation. We have to remember that, especially when it's and that kind of thing. And as far as maintenance staffing, to kind of echo Rich's thing, is a lot of other cities of similar size have more staffing for what they take care of. And we do a lot with a little. Which takes us to maintenance and upkeep. And I think we hit on a lot of that already, but you can see we do a lot of different things. We have a lot of parks, we have a lot of opportunities for people to participate in all these things, but we have to make sure that we keep them looking nice. Accessibility. This is an area for the last few years that we've already kind of, as you said, jumped the gun on. We've been working toward a lot of projects related to accessibility. We have a decent-sized population of people that can take advantage of that. really everybody can take advantage. It's not just people that have disabilities that need accessibility. We have people that have mobility issues. We have an aging population as well. Just think of all the baby boomers that are going to be getting older. They're going to be probably interested in being able to do the things that they've always been able to do. So we talked about Arts West, restroom facilities, making sure that what we have is up to date, our playgrounds and trails, make sure that people can enjoy all the things that we have to offer. Did I hit it?
Yeah.
Okay. The outdoor pavilion amphitheater, this is something we've been discussing for a little while now, just as kind of kicking around the idea. I know several years ago there were a few different people that were interested in this idea, and again, that land thing is something that we have to consider. There's not a whole lot of places that are left that have a nice open space like this, at least in the city. You want to talk a little bit more?
Yeah, one of the things we've been working on out back in the community center here, we're building a big pad. So anything that we would have, say, perform a band or whatnot, we can put on the pad. We have electric access to it. And then we have the lawn kind of towards the south. You could actually use the bank of the skate park, or maybe a couple of trees to relocate. But that is one consideration, as well as back there. We mentioned Dairy Lane Shelter is one of our largest and most rented shelters. We could have a pavilion. Anywhere in that space back there would be twice the size of Dairy Lane, but also be multi-use. Maybe into the fact where it's so large that one group would rent one end and another group at another end. Along with that, the tennis courts may not be in the best location. So we already have a pad for a nice pavilion, and or something other useful other than tennis, because if you visit the courts, the water floods, it thaws, freezes, silts. We'd like a higher ground for some tennis courts. But with that being said, we plug in the OU courts, we keep an eye on things. We have double, maybe triple tennis courts we need here. Maybe it's just a location thing, maybe it's probably more of a condition thing for us why our tennis courts are not utilized the way they probably would be. Not everybody can go over to the green by the university, find a place to park, and then get on the courts with the student population there. So that is one of the things we'd like to address in this rare area. Definitely move the tennis courts to higher ground.
And then another option would be, we talked a little bit before about over on Dairy Lane, we've got a nice natural hillside that we could utilize. There's electric and water and bathrooms over there. I think that we could work with OU and parking in that area because we do have the ridges, but that is another potential area. Again, all these things are up for discussion. We'll be looking at more seriously here in the future. And then the Athens City Pool. And to give you a little bit of background about the city pool, it was opened in the early 70s, 71, 72. Mayor Ray Shepard, at the time, it was one of his projects to put that in. We have a 588,300 gallon concrete pond. And with that, we have another 29,000 gallon kiddie pool. Yes, Rich?
How old were you when that pool was built?
I wasn't alive. But I know a lot about it. Previous to the city pool, we had the Crystal Pool over by Station Street in that area. And that was built where a canal used to be, actually. It's kind of cool if you like history. But our pool is a relic of history in a lot of ways. We use the same technology now that we were using in 1971 to run the pool. The only difference is we have an automatic strand control system that helps us regulate chemical flow, but we still test every 2 hours while we're open during the day, and we adjust our levels because it's a good indicator, but because of the amount of water, it doesn't do its job the way it should. We use manual valves, and it is below water level where our pump room is. So what happens is when the electricity goes off, it's not a big deal to many people, but at the pool it's a huge deal. So I get a call pretty quickly, say, hey, the pool alarm is going off, something's going on, I run over here. And by the time I get from this building over to there, we've got 4 to 6 inches of water down in the pump room. There's a lot of challenges related to that, including electrical issues, the pumps at ground level, and again, it's a technology thing in a lot of ways. We have to manually shut those valves off. The water wants to level itself off, right? Because water wants to flow in a certain direction and level out. So all the water that's up here comes down here until it decides that it wants to level itself out.
Main electric motor is 14 inches from the floor level?
Less than that.
Less than that?
Less than that. Several years ago, we put in some switches to be able to make it a safer space for people like me working in there. So we have a kill switch up by the door that we can hit, because before, the turn-off switch is on the other side of the room. Now imagine walking through a giant puddle of water to hit an emergency kill switch. So we had the electrician change that several years ago.
They like living on the edge.
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting tired of doing that, I should say.
So I can go on and on about the issues with the pool. Most of it's related to it being an older pool. The second issue is we have a kiddie pool, which is nice, and we have the big pool. The laws since the mid-1980s state that you need to have separate filtration and chemical systems for each body of water that you have. We don't. We have one filtration system, so whatever's happening in the kiddie pool is going into the big pool. And while we do a good job of making sure our chemical levels are sufficient, and we have a great filtration system, we have one of the best filtration systems still anywhere. We use a thing called diatomaceous earth. It's DE. It's ground up crustaceans, basically, which is really great. But one of the things, if we start doing any sorts of additions or changes to our current pool, is that we have to get separate filtration systems for both. It really is at the end of its useful life. I think the 2005 survey that was done, we had a group come in and evaluate the pool and give us some recommendations. At that time, they said 87% of the lifespan of the pipes had been used up at that point. We have these giant 12-inch cast iron pipes. They're pretty cool to check out and see the water flowing through. They were at 87%, and that was in 2005. That was a few years ago. It's hard to believe that that was a few years ago. So we are, every single year it's a challenge to get things, it's a hope and a prayer, and hit the pumps and hope that nothing happens. 2 years ago we had a small issue right before we opened. We had a line break under the concrete between the baby pool and the large pool. We're losing up to 29,000 gallons every 24 hours. That is a lot of water to lose. And we had the water crew come, and their expertise is in fixing water line breaks. They came over and threw their dye in, and it disappeared. And they go, what happened here? We can't figure this out. So they bring a backhoe over. This is 2 days before we open. And I'm going, please do not break any concrete, because we're getting ready to open. I'm really hoping you get this on the money the first try. And they came over and they're doing their educated guess and spray painting all the way around. They said, this is the first spot, second spot, in order of what we think it might be. And they thankfully hit that concrete and got it on the first try and was able to fix that. And that's, each year, that's the fear, is that, we're going to have something like that and we're not going to be able to get it on the first try, which means no pool. So we are really seriously working toward doing a replacement of the pool. And we've located a few different options, and we'll be working toward coming up with some more recommendations for what we can do. Option 1 would be to replace the pool in its current location. Option 2 would be to flip things with what we have is the Bicentennial Park behind it. So we move the pool back and then switch around. Option 3 would be where the current dog park on the east side is, would be to move things around and kind of do a big shuffle and build a full-service pool over there, which is close to the wastewater treatment, which is great for us. The pipes are already there, and kind of switch things around. Now, remember, we're on top of an old airport, so all of this is just fill dirt. It's got a lot of rock, it's got a lot of stuff in it, so there's going to be some challenges when it comes to putting anything into it. So those are things to keep in mind. I think Rich could probably expand a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is we'd like to have a swimming pool open and running during the construction phase of the new swimming pool. We're probably talking 16, 18 months, which possibly could mean 2 years without a pool. We get a lot of attendance and a lot of usage of our current pool, so that, if things move forward, we reach our goals, and things turn out the way we'd like. And Andrew, you'll see him here in the next 2 weeks, beginning of May. He's going to look a little crazy because he's trying to get that thing running. That's his goal, is to keep it running for as long as we can and build a new pool in the process. So there's smooth transition, and we're not wondering what we're going to do to keep people hydrated over the summer.
The rest of the, we've already hired lifeguards. We are planning on opening the pool. I got a couple phone calls already this week saying, I heard the pool's closed. I said, no, the pool isn't closing. We are still planning to open. We already put together brochures and books and all that stuff. We plan on opening business as usual. The reason I want to give you some background information is to highlight exactly what is happening there, not sugarcoat, that we do our best with what we've got. We put in a liner several years ago because the concrete was going bad. We have to do a lot of work with patching our deck every year. If you look at the line between the 3-foot to the 9-foot section, where the gutter is, it does a really big dip because we had a lot of, when that leak happened, everything's washing underneath the pool itself. So what's that concrete want to do? It's to settle. So there are a lot of challenges with keeping that thing running. We have the last of its kind pump. It is one of, at the time when we got it, one of 3 left in the country, and we got it from Texas, I think.
Yeah, I don't know that we can get an impeller. One here rips off the impeller at the pool. So we get a lot of shrapnel. And what Andrew's explained about how he opened, that's probably been the last kind of protocol the last 5 or 6 years. We keep our fingers crossed, throw the switch, keep our eye on it, fill it slow. When you look at what we've been doing over there to improve our current pool, most of the items you'll see are we can remove. We can add them to a new facility, whether it's the climbing wall, the slide. We have to put some steps in. The new pool, it's a no-brainer that we would like to have. It's going to be 0 depth. Currently our pool is not very friendly to a non-swimmer. They have to pretty much get in 30 inches of water or more and go down a set of steps with one bar and about 50 kids thrashing about in front of them. It's not very comforting. To sneak in maybe a toe or an ankle at a time is feel a little more comfortable. So
this is also an accessibility thing. Our current pool is not accessible.
So those are just some of the things we're required to do, and there's some things that we know as far as operations and staffing that we've got some ideas. But again, we've brought together everything we've kind of displayed tonight, and are looking for the community to become involved and let us know what they would like to see. I think Paul said it best. We'd love to make everybody have what they want. Land, money, and staffing are all issues that we have to make it work. So that's really our goal here tonight, is to gain support from you folks and the rest of the community.
So at this time, we're going to open it up to you. And I always brace myself because it's
I would like to bring in one more guest speaker.
Yeah.
Rick, if you wouldn't mind, not that we have a price tag on our wish list or your wish list. Rick is our chair on advisory board. He knows a thing or two about levees since he's put together the one that built this facility. He spearheaded the kind of the financial aspect of our plan. So,
Okay.
thank you, Rick.
Yeah, how do we pay for it? That's a key question. When the advisory committee really started looking at this, we are thinking of the model that's happening in the streets department. Every 10 years they come to the voters and ask for 0.1% to be renewed. I think they've done it 3 times now, and we keep the city streets in relatively good shape. When we went to the voters and asked for the first to build this facility, which was $6.5 million, we asked for 0.1% for 20 years. We did that in 1996, and the voters approved it. And when I met with the auditor, Kathy Hecht, in February. She told me that these are the numbers. We owe, because she refinanced the bonds, so we're at 2% interest right now, which is really nice. We owe $1,453,000 left on this building between now and the end of 2016. But we have $681,000 in the bank as of the first of the year. And the auditor projects that they're going to generate new income and interest income of about $690,000 this year, which would leave us about a little over $80,000 short of paying off all the bonds. But the reality of it is that everybody doesn't pay all their taxes in 2014 in 2014. You pay them by April 15th, and you make your final estimates and all the other stuff. So probably that $80,000 will be collected early in 2015 to pay off the bonds for this, which leaves us with a facility needing maintenance, as we talked about. But it also leaves us with the idea that the advisory board has is to go to city council and say, 10-year, 0.1%, same amount we're collecting now, be no increase to taxes. Probably would raise $7 million or more over that 10 years just on the current amounts, because we don't know what the state's going to do to say what is taxable income to a municipality right now, so we have to be a little conservative. But a pool, I don't know how much you want to spend on it, 4 or 5 million? Who knows? It just all depends upon how you could. All depends upon what we do with it. But that also, the thing that I think that the advisory committee is really very focused on is that some of the changes that we have to do here is the old ordinance said that it was for the purpose of paying any and all expenses associated with the construction, equipment, and furnishing of a recreation/community facility for the city of Athens. We'd like to expand on that definition to include maintenance, to include, upkeep, whether it's contracted maintenance or hiring people. But that's where we think, the opportunity is to go to council here in the next month or so. We're going to meet again early in May after this meeting and come up with a formal recommendation to make to the mayor and council, and it's going to be up to them. And that's where we could potentially pay for it. And that's the shortest presentation of the night.
Short and sweet, Ray, thank you. Yeah, when we look at pools, we have so many different opportunities. I did contact Nelsonville. They built theirs for $2.2 million. So that gives you any idea. And it's maybe half or a third the size of what we have currently. We're leaning towards a lot more of a splash park situation where kids can run and play, and there's no threat. They fall on the ground, they're not underwater. They might swallow some water and cough it back up. Cuts down on the drowning, it's a bigger play area. Parents can enjoy themselves a little more in the shade. We do staff it, but it's not. It also separates them from the teenagers and the bigger kids doing what bigger kids do. So it keeps them safe. And then, we just go down the list of what we've talked about tonight and start adding things up. And we hope what we're looking at with Rick's homework that we're right in that ballpark. And if we have extra, there's nothing wrong with that. But all this will be based upon what we decide upon as a city, how we move forward with the voters with the income tax levy, how we maintain it, how we operate it, and the cost involved in that. I would say, we want you to want to spend money or play with us. We're not a need. We're not like the police or fire or sewer or street that you need. So it's our job to listen to you, do a good job in providing recreational opportunities for you, so you'll support us. That's all we have. Anybody want to start with questions? Andrew or even Paul, how we got to where we're at, or myself?
I already have my family pool pass, so Heard it on it.
Well, that's your man.
I just want to say, you know, we all do recognize police and fire protection, but we also recognize quality of life and community center, the arts, parks, and recreation.
This community has put it way high on the list. That's why we have what we have. And I'm very proud to be part of the department and really happy to see all of our facilities up to snuff. And, you know, you get down the west, oh, that looks like a headache, but yeah, but people are using the park. Or you go down the south side, you see all the kids, everybody playing. That's what community that stays together plays together. Yes, you kind of say that.
Hey, Rich, I have a question. It's been many years since I've been to the parks, but are there any plans or consideration for smoke-free? And do you have signage?
We do have signage at almost all the parks, and they're big blue boards. But just to catch up with you, we've been discussing that for the last couple of months. We finally got to the weather that's correct. I had stickers made, and they say, young lungs, and there's no smoking sign in the middle of them. And just 2 days ago, I was able to get out, so if you look out on this playground or any other playground, all four corners of playgrounds will have those smaller stickers, something that maybe kids can peel off, but they're kind of inexpensive because if any of you worked with us before, we'll put something somewhere and some things just don't stick around very long and disappear. So, and again, we put a big sign up. It's something they can fall on, get hurt on, or ends up in, I wouldn't say it's anybody's dorm room, but it's been known to happen. But these stickers, hopefully, you know, it's something we really shouldn't have to explain to an adult. You don't do that in this facility or around our young ones.
So
Yes.
Do you actually have an ordinance or a policy, or is it just kind of assumed with those?
I would say we have a park rule.
Okay.
When you start looking at ordinances and certain policies, and how do we enforce it? And then what's the process?
Right, that's always good.
That's the difficult part.
Yeah. Because I know Delaware County, they're pretty successful. I mean, they have maybe 8 or 9 of their towns or communities that have smoke-free, and some of them don't have ordinances, but it's the signage that's up and, you know, does it.
I
But
would,
you always have those
Yeah.
people, though, that are not going to
right.
respect.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I would encourage the same thing like our dog parks. If you enjoy our dog parks and you see another person with an aggressive dog, let's say, peer pressure works really, really well. Several folks that are also enjoying that, other parents, we're just going to have to approach some of these folks and politely ask them that we don't appreciate that. And if they get a little rowdy, then we call our favorite. You can call me, but I don't have the right to arrest them or do anything. I can do the same thing you do,
Uh-huh.
but I would call APD.
Okay.
You're not real happy and you feel that situation is beyond what we can deal with.
So, but you said that these little signs, though, they're going to be at all the parks then?
They're at all parks right now, on every piece, not on every piece of playground, but if you were to walk into the playground area, you should be able to see one north, south, east, or west. And they're all about eye level, just out of reach of little fingernails.
Is that policy stated somewhere else as well in the literature, no smoking in the parks?
You know, we have a board out here, we have one in front. I would say no, other than our park rules. And I can't make people read them.
But could you put it on your website?
We could. I think it might be in the brochure, I'm not sure. Andrew's the brochure guru.
So I went through this, and it was,
So
Possibly.
that, one of the reasons for this meeting is to figure out what did we miss, and I just wrote that down. We
Okay.
need to make sure we include language in the final planning document about smoke-free. So it's important. It's important that you came to point that out.
Any other? Yes.
I have to talk about the pool. The concept of a pool being replacing a pool, I would prefer aquatic center, because I certainly want more than just a pool. I want indoor facilities that can be used year round. If you put money into a pool, it can only be used a few months out of the year. what's going to be done with it for the rest of the winter? It's not utilized. But if you get an indoor pool, you can have swim classes going on, you can have aerobic therapy going on, you can have a lot of facilities, a lot of people taking advantage of it. Handicap facilities in an aquatic facility rather than a pool. I was telling some friends that I went down to McKinney, Texas, and what they had was a meandering stream with a current in it, and a smaller pool that was only about 4 feet, I would say, 4.5 feet deep, that was heated to a warmer temperature. Because older people, there are a few of us, that like a warmer temperature. If you're going to do aerobic therapy, you're going to want a warmer temperature pool. So it was just a smaller pool, but it was heated to a higher temperature. It wasn't a hot tub temperature, but a warmer temperature. Then a few laps for a lap pool. And then the sprinkler type concept of a rubber mat that the kids are playing on with the water, sprinklers coming up. And that whole facility was indoors. Right outdoors, right outside, that meandering stream actually went outside to the outdoor pool. And there was an outdoor area where people could go and sit in the sun during the summer, but it could be closed off come wintertime. So that type of aquatic center is used year-round, and you can see it as income producing when you start charging for toddler swims, for infant swims, for adult swimming, teaching them. All of that comes.
Diving, lifeguard lessons, birthday parties, swim parties. We probably have a list that, we as a community have to make that decision. My part is I'm going to let you know when we get the staffing and the maintenance, okay, these are part of that cost.
That's right. Yeah.
We can build, the biggest mountain, but from my standpoint, I want to keep your mountain nice and shiny and staffed so you're safe. So
I personally would stay away from diving boards. I think diving boards, forget the diving boards.
That's why we're here. We want feedback. We've identified certain things that the community wants. We're not, we might provide some input or some do's and don'ts. A lot of what we do anymore is if we buy a piece of fitness equipment, we may call 2 or 3 other gyms because of course the salesman's going to tell us it's the best. We call their gym, find out that's a maintenance headache. We're always fixing it. It's never working. So we will go to other pools. We'll go to Marietta. We'll go to Nelsonville. We'll go to Columbus, Cleveland. What do you like about your pool? And they'll have a short list. What don't you like about it? They'll keep you there for an hour and tell you what not to do, guaranteed. You go to any facility, because that's what that manager has to deal with every day, nonstop. I'm sorry, Chris?
Rich, and I too would support an aquatic center idea, but then I wear my other hat and say, how much? So you said that the Nelsonville pool was $2.2 million and 1/3 the size of ours. Do we have any kind of ballpark ideas or considering what would an aquatic center, are we talking 5 million? Are there any other cities around here?
I would say, gosh, I hope 5 million gets us a pretty doggone nice facility. I don't, I'm going to have to contact maybe Brandsetter and Carroll. We contact them for city. They've built the most pools here probably over the last 5 or 6 years. We don't have a lot to run with or go on around our area to compare with, indoor-wise. We have 2 outdoor facilities. Marietta's never, they told me they'd get back to me, tell me what it cost. I've still not gotten any word from them. Mayor?
First of all, thanks for doing the presentation. And thank the Rec Advisory Board, our Park Recreation Art Advisory Board, both past members and present. I know that the levy you have for this facility is started as 0.15.
Yes.
With the 0.1 sunsetting, so the 0.05 is for the maintenance. I believe that's the concept that was put forward. How much does that cover actual cost of what you're doing here? I guess is question one. And what would you see when you talk about doing the pool and the maintenance? Are you talking about a 0.5 to do that, or some? perpetual, part of it, or, you understand what I'm saying? It's probably
Right.
a Rick question. I don't really want to put you on the spot there, but when you talk about, you gotta do maintenance, and then you talk about 10-year levy, you're either gonna have that chunk of money you're gonna hold for a long time as a, principal, or you're gonna have to find another way to fund it.
Well, some of the things that we do currently, of course, we have fees, and we base those fees on our best scientific knowledge of recreation and what it takes to run a facility. Now, probably the goal is to break even, but that's not always going to be possible. We are a city service, but again, that's where we're going to have to really run the numbers and see where those numbers crank out as far as what are we building and then what are we going to plug in. I think that's why we want to change the language on that. Did I answer your question?
Well, the other side, of course, it's going to go to the voters. So,
Yes.
the idea is if you think there's a need, and I'm talking to my citizens here, this is what you have to, articulate, whittle it down. We will look at the numbers if
Promote it.
possible and go from there.
Promote it, go out and promote it.
Go out and promote it, yes. But have a clear picture of what you want to end up with. And I see some hands.
I got a hand back here in the back.
I also want to ditto commendations to everybody in our wonderful facility directing and things day to day that we all enjoy and the committees that work hard. As a resident in the county and somebody who would mightily like to see a year-round pool option and has seen in Lancaster, their senior center has a pool of modest size, but it is lined up with hourly events from 7 in the morning through 7 at night. A heated pool, a nicely heated pool. I think about the obesity challenge that we have in our society and all of the children that don't have the monies and don't come to our outdoor pool. And I wonder if there isn't any way to partner on a pool with voters in our county that could enhance the funding and make something for year-round and have some considerations, special considerations for every child in the county for safety, learning how to swim and having some experience like that. And maybe there'd be swim teams and other things.
And partnering with physical therapy type situations, because I can't tell you how many times I've had doctors, because I have orthopedic issues, saying, well, you need to swim, well, you need to swim. And my question is always, where do I swim here? There's nowhere to swim here for a person that needs I can't go to the OU pool because they keep it too cold for the competition, and I don't really want to go to the Holiday Inn's pool. And so I would think that with all of the people that are given that advice, I can't believe I'm the only one, that there wouldn't be something that would be a money-raising situation, that because so many of us would be so grateful to have it and use it and promote it, certainly. So that would be, I think, an avenue of fundraising to look at.
I'm going to go over here real quick here. Ben has
as far as funding goes, what's the reasoning for doing income tax funding versus property tax funding?
Well, Rick might have a better explanation why that was utilized back in the...
There's a growth factor with the income tax factor because inflation and everything else, and hopefully you encourage more employment. And so it's going to be growing. And so the first years that we had, 18 years ago or so on this, we collected less than $500,000 a year. Now we're doing the upper $600,000 a year figure. Whereas property taxes, that's the amount when you voted in, it never changes. Until you do a renewal.
So it doesn't grow
Lock your money.
it doesn't grow with property value?
It does not.
Here are several folks from the Athens Community Soccer Organization. We've been looking through the master plan, sending a lot of emails back and forth, and when we got up to enough information, we realized we needed to write some stuff down.
think let me answer some more questions possibly. I really think that might be something we set and do aside. Let me have a couple other people have their questions answered because we've been here for a little bit. Mary?
Yeah, Rich, I just wanted to say I also support the aquatic center idea, mostly just because I do think they would bring a lot of additional revenue and activity. And I think that would be seconded with the outdoor amphitheater and additional things. I think, any improvements that we're making to our arts and park department, it's really helpful to have a way to have an enterprise aspect. And just
Mary's in charge of CFI, and we're currently going to put in a orchard up in Highland Park too. So I'm going to beat you to that one.
We're happy to continue working with the city in collaboration to use any green space for community orchards or other local food access projects using smart strategic growth.
I think that the other thing with the aquatic, and I know they've mentioned some of them, but I know there's groups of arthritic groups that need a place, diabetic groups that need a place. All of this can be used with an indoor pool. So you could definitely, and taking babies in to learn to swim when there's not a lot of other kids around during the winter, they would be ready to go in an outside pool if you're able to incorporate both. Swimming is so therapeutic. I can't tell you how much. I've been swimming for 24 years. I had a back issue I don't have anymore. And when I don't do that, I can be affected by it. It is the best form of therapy in general for, I think, anybody. And any doctor tells you that. So get in the water. Age doesn't matter. I think it's critically important to Athens. Again, we're very forward-thinking, and this would be an absolutely wonderful thing to do. And I think you've got enough people to really go out and beat the bushes and encourage people to be positive about this.
Well, I think if we're going to move down this road, we do it right first time.
Exactly.
And not back up and go, oh, I wish we would have done this.
Yeah, if you end up with just another outdoor pool, and that's all it is.
We could have that and an indoor. Right. It could be indoor and outdoor. We've had, listened to all taking a lot of information.
And trust me, you've got people that would probably come and help you maintain it.
Yeah.
I know 3 in this room.
VIP for my office, volunteers in the park, volunteer in the pool.
I painted that pool over there once.
Yeah,
I mean it when I say it. I mean, we appreciate our ability to go swimming.
we really do.
Bob.
In the end, it's about maintaining a balance in the community that supports a quality of life that doesn't address any single day of your life, but addresses the whole of your life and your family and your children and your neighbors and all. That is, you can't afford to lose a big chunk. There have to be all things present. You can't afford to let one thing drive everything else to the exclusion of everything else. Probably the best example is the 5th century Greece. In the very same, in the city after which we're named, Athens, they achieved a thing called the Golden Age, which many people think was the perfect synthesis of the intellect and the aesthetic, the various elements that came together. I have been reading the proposals of long-term plans in this city for 10 or 15 years. I've been looking at them. They all aspire to this type of balance. Sometimes it's executed, sometimes it's not. But that's the goal. It's not just addressing today's problems. It's addressing this balance as a part of the one thing that a community can bring its people when it works together, and that's the opportunity to have that balance, that opportunity to have that quality of life that goes beyond just roads, security, parking meters, all of that.
Really, I'm here to support the indoor-outdoor pool concept, period. If you can't do that, then put it off for another 40 years. Because that's what you need. I mean, I've been here when it was Crystal, and then it took so long to get this pool from Mayor Shepherd, and how excited I was to see that happen. But the indoor, outdoor pool has been talked about. But what I'm going to mention about your tennis courts. Have you ever heard of pickleball?
Yeah.
Have
We
you ever
we
thought
actually
of
had a league. We tried to start a league here.
Did you?
And it didn't take off. Then we had open
I mean-
pickleball, and actually,
Still,
the courts are actually on the gymnasium floor, taped in.
Okay,
You come in
because
with a partner,
that
it's
is a
not-
very popular thing down in Florida. It's a very popular thing out west. A lot of people don't understand what it is and how it's played, but it's, the elderly people like it better than tennis
Yes. It's a
because
little-
it's more low impact.
Yes.
So that's a possibility to even, I have found in life that even though something doesn't work 20 years ago, it may work now. So you may try it again. You know, you have that alternative. You can bring out the old skirt you wore 20 years ago. So that's a thought on your tennis courts. Also, your space that I think that your committee and your staff has done such an exceptional job on presenting it to us, that the forethought and what will happen will be what you have planned, and your ideas are great. We can feed in a little information like swimming pools. If you use chemicals, you're going to have a lot of allergies. If you use chlorine, you're safer. Because I go to Las Vegas a lot, and the Red Sox team came out there, and they were swimming in the Hilton pool when they first put it in 20 years ago, and it was all chemicals, and they all broke out. And so they had to put in a brand new system of chlorine. So that is very important, and I'm sure you've thought of it, and especially, Andy, with you and your pool, you know, trying to keep it running.
One of the options with putting in a new pool would be to use, we use a thing called sodium hypochlorite as our chlorinator. That's what kills all the stuff that's in the water. Would be to use that as a complementary system and move more toward a UV system, which keeps water neutral. Basically, you have a giant long tube with UV light all around, so it's a clear tube. The UV light goes around it and kills everything that's in it. And you run two pipes, basically. They split. You run two pipes with UV going through, and you use a chlorinator as a complement, so it's a very low level. It's something that I would advocate for. It's
Okay.
more efficient. You're not going to be, because anytime you put chlorine in anything, it's going to break down over time. You have to continue to put chemicals into the chlorine into it.
It's corrosive.
It's expensive too.
I know.
Sodium hypo is pretty expensive. We have 450-gallon tanks that we use, and we go through, if it's a warm week, we'll go through over, what, almost 600, let's see. Yeah, almost all 600 gallons in a week. We have a truck that comes once a week to refill. So that's probably one of our biggest expenses is in sodium hypo. And I really advocate for doing a UV system where if a light bulb goes out, take out the bulb, slap in a new one, it's good to go for another 10,000 hours or whatever.
I just really hate to even think that you would consider just the pool at this stage in our.
That's the big ticket item. That's the oldest piece of our puzzle right here. I mean, this is fairly new compared to the pool, which is 71, as it says, and we're on 40 years.
40 plus years.
Yeah.
I mean, it really needs to be an indoor pool for in Ohio.
I just want to say, you know, it is going to the voters, and the cost again might drive this.
Exactly.
And you know, you've already heard a question about why does it have to be an income tax, and then if the pool eats up all $7 million, that doesn't leave anything, you know, for the others. So that's what you're all going to struggle with.
But if you
and
do
then
just
do
an
we ask
outdoor
for an
pool,
increase?
yeah, but if you do just an
how does that
outdoor pool, you only get the income for 3 months.
I love swimming. There
And I can be honest with you, motels in town are not going to let people be swimming in the pools now because of the liability. And so there is no place to swim except Ohio University. So that's a very limited aspect to look at for a town this size, that a doctor says you need to be in the pool.
I think that it really is, you know, that give and take with that. You really need to consider, if you want an indoor pool, there's going to be some certain things that are going to come with that. We're only open for 82 days out of the year, 82 to 84 days out of the year for the current pool in the state. The cost for guards,
Exactly.
and for cashiers, and most likely if you have an indoor pool, what would happen would be we'd have to hire a full-time person to just manage
Exactly.
the pool. So those are some things that you're going to need to consider.
Well, it'd be
Along with
another
that,
business.
if we're talking about chemical costs, DE, all that stuff, right now, I hate to burst people's bubbles, but pools are losing propositions. You don't see many private pools making money. Go to any town, you don't hear about, you know, the Andrew Chicky private pool. It's not there. Usually you have it as a public entity because it's a service. It really, you know, the reason why you see a lot of pools that have lots of activities all the time is because it's necessary. If you don't have people in the water, you're losing money. You have to, from the moment you open, the time you close during the day, you better have bodies in the water. And that's something that, you know, you as citizens, and for myself too, have to consider is we have to pack that thing every single day to make it worthwhile. When we start dropping off, if there's not programs going on, if there's things not happening, you have to consider, we have to raise rates for people that do want to use it. We have to maintain what we have going on. Also consider that if you have heaters in a pool and those kinds of things, so it's a warm, moist environment, there's other things that are going to happen. You're going to have microbes. You're going to have potential for growth, so you have to mitigate that every way you can. If you go over to the OU Aquatic Center, if you talk to Joe over there, he's going to tell you about some big concerns that they have over there. For one, from the moment they built it, it's a wet, corrosive environment. The infrastructure starts falling apart. If you go onto their second floor at their deck and you go walk around and see along the concrete wall, you can tap on it and it just disintegrates in your hand. That's part of having an indoor pool, is that from the moment you build it, it's a consumable item. It's a very expensive consumable item. You can't do much once your infrastructure fails with something like that. So those are some things you're going to have to consider.
I'm aware that we operate at a loss for those 82 to 84 days, and a lot of it has to do with weather. Cold weather, storm, the pool gets cleared out. And again, really it comes down to what you as people want. I mean, if the voters are willing to pay for this, and what will happen is that, you know, the advisory commission will put something together, they'll bring it up to council. Council will say, well, this looks like it's worth going, moving forward, putting it on the ballot. We could always put 2 or 3 options on the ballot, knowing full well that that would make it even more confusing. But if you know, again, we have a lot of stuff that a lot of small cities don't. You know, you have to look at a skate park. I don't think there are many cities this size that have a skate park, or 2 dog parks for that matter. You know, and part of the thing is trying to keep some of these parks primitive. Sells Park, for instance, goes all the way to Stroud, so we've been linked into the state park at this point. But again, you know, if the will is there, it can happen. You know, the question is how much lobbying do you want to do with your neighbors, your fellow citizens, and the other side of it is to have a clear image of where we want to go with this. The only reason why we concentrate on pool, because that we know has to be fixed. You know, there's about 2 or 3 things I know have to be fixed in the near future. Some I can mothball, like the armory, which we won't even go into right now. Other ones, well, I bring it up.
That might be where the pool should be.
Okay, because again, it's operation costs on that. The other one is the parking garage. We're due for a rehab of the parking garage. I suspect if we're lucky, we'll drop under $1 million to maintain the parking garage, which I would say most people consider necessary. You know?
It is necessary.
So I look at the resources that I need to play with, to use. You know, I have fellow council members who are aware of what these needs are. We work together. We work with you guys. The ballot, if there's a choice to say let's move forward with a pool, which is, as I say, is part of it, because there's other things too. Soccer fields are needed. You know, the real estate out here is expensive anywhere on East State Street to do a soccer field. A negotiation with the university, then you're going to have to tell them where they want to put their driving range. Where, you know, we have to come up with alternatives. You know, if we're going to take their real estate or even negotiate their real estate, we have to have something to negotiate with.
Is there space for the soccer fields over there at West State?
That's a good question.
Well, why don't they open up a road so you can get to them? Why doesn't have to be one road going?
There's a 10-acre piece of land that was acquired last year, I think, by the city.
Yeah, the grant that acquired that, though, outlines that we can't do soccer there.
Oh, you can use.
Yeah, it has to be passive sort of recreation. I thought frisbee golf, and we'll have every tee box and insect and flower identification and tree identification, but it won't work there.
Conservation.
Yeah, it's so.
It's like a lot of grants.
I already was like, and
Yeah, because it's approved right there along that side.
what's that? Pay for it? What was the grant split on that, on the Hope property? Do we know? I think 80 or 90% was covered.
It's usually
80-20.
How many dollars?
If you want, I can send it.
If we find out, I don't.
Remember, Paul? I don't recall offhand, but we've identified that piece of land. We're already working on continuing the bike path connector off that bridge with some switchbacks, and that'll connect up to University States development. There's also, we're working with Voinovich School right now to do planning to restore a wetland for several acres of that piece of land. So there is major.
They've got a wetland right
property
here.
that identified.
Well, thank
Okay, but again, I think we will be coming to you and council and with the idea that we need to replace some things and we need to, if you want to add more, you say let's raise taxes more, and that's how it goes about that.
Just a quick one. Andy, or both of you, and like the attendance in the community center the first year basis now. How is that? Has it leveled? Has it grown? Has it deteriorated? What?
That's a really great question. What has happened over time? We started out just because it is new, people are very interested. We got our analysis back yesterday. I had a phone conference. We use a company called ActiveNet that we work with for our registrations and that kind of thing. And we are pretty consistent, pretty flat when it comes to what we've kind of hit kind of our stride. We have a very consistent user base here. It doesn't waver too much off of 1%. We have over 16,000, it's 16,790 unique entries for people that have used this facility in some capacity. From our membership standpoint, we're very consistent with our membership. We saw a really big increase about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. We started a program called Silver Sneakers for senior citizens. It's through Healthways, the insurance pays for it. We have over 900 senior citizens that are members through that now. We get a substantial amount back through their insurance companies for that. So we saw a big increase with that. That's been pretty consistent. But in every demographic, we've been very, very level. So we've kind of hit stride. Again, you have only so much of the market. What we need to look at now is doing evaluations for the programs that we're offering for the community center. So our classes, we just did a reconstruction for child care programs in the last 9 months. And we're working toward rolling that out now. So if you look at our daycare program, it's completely different than it was last year. But with the rest of our classes, we've really, in the fitness class area, we've had pretty much the same classes for the last 14 years. We haven't done a whole lot of changes to it. We're like, it's working, let's not mess with it too much. But we're at the point now where we need to figure out, what things aren't working so well, what can we do to reinvigorate those programs. Our fill rate's it's like 55%. So our class overall enrollment hits 55% of our total potential enrollment.
All right, well, point I was making with the pool, you're not going to maybe have it come up running. Because you've got to promote the kinds of classes that you can offer, the offers of all different ages. And once you can get those going, I think that you would see a very good use of the pool. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that need it. And even the fact that, like you've done with the insurance and the Silver Sneakers, you could work with the doctors and insurance to get people in there for physical therapy of swimming and have the insurance help.
And that is something with the Silver Sneakers program that extends to pools. They have the program for pools. And to go back to my earlier statement saying that pools are a losing proposition, however, it doesn't mean that it can't be done or it shouldn't be done.
That's right. You have no competition.
That it is called a source in some ways, but you really need to consider what you're asking for. Really evaluate everything that goes into that, not just the good parts. You know, that cost, if you're looking at full-time staff, part-time staff, chemicals, all of that, to me, knowing how much it costs to run a pool for 84 days, it gives me a heart attack thinking what an entire year would look like. Because we're looking at, just for running for 84 days, it's like $91,000 or $96,000 just out the door right there. So really consider it.
It's been very interesting to hear everyone's points in the discussion. But could we talk about soccer just for a moment?
Well, we have talked about soccer, and we've gotten to a point where if folks would like to stay, and I'm sure you had a great presentation, but I'm going to release them to do whatever they'd like to do in about 5 minutes if you'd like to share the presentation. But tonight was about the Athens City Master Plan and how we will address soccer in the future. And I know we already work with your group, and I'd love to continue to work with your group. So with that being said, if anybody would like to stay, these guys prepared a presentation for us. If not, in about you can
And
kind
I love soccer too. My
I do
husband
too.
watches it constantly on TV. But I'm gonna go get dinner.